The story of Palestine and your relationship to Palestine is quite a story, I have to say. I mean, looking into your own biography, it's on one level quite fascinating. You know, the work that you've done, whether since you were a journalist, since you were an editor, and then moving on, and the books you wrote and the podcast that you headed. I'm wondering, how closely related was it to the fact that your mother was killed in a suicide attack in Israel in 2002?
Well, thanks for the kind words. I'm not sure I agree with everything what you're saying regarding me. Doesn't matter. How closely related? Nothing and everything.
How so?
Well, as a person, you evolve gradually, right? And your thinking and your feelings and...
But surely something as big as that.
Nothing happened after 20 years it started moving. Now it's 21 years. But for the first, I described it once, my mother was killed 2002 by a Palestinian suicide bomber in Netanya. She was there as a tourist, but she was Jewish, and so am I. And for the first 3 years, it felt like being down, I don't know if the word is right, in a well, you know, where you pick. Yeah. Down in the well, it's dark, it's quiet. And on top of the well, there was this wooden top.
Yes.
I don't know what you call it.
Yeah, the sort of door that closes the well.
And on top of that was a big stone. So that was me. And that was for 3 years. Then I did a documentary called My Mother Was Killed by a Suicide Bomber, as you know.
Yeah.
And I thought that was the beginning of some kind of closure. And I was completely wrong. It was not even the beginning of the beginning. It was just activating my original trauma 3 years earlier. So now, slowly, through the work, this Nakba book that we're going to talk about, I guess, but also other projects interviewing survivors from the Holocaust, that slowly helped me a bit further. And now I feel I can talk about this. That's why I'm here. I can write about it. But it took me 21 years. So I'm a slow starter.
Were you, as a family, would you categorize yourselves as Zionists?
Yeah, my upbringing is kind of fun because my mother came from Poland to Sweden, not during Hitler, but before. Okay. Because she had aunts here in Sweden. Yeah, not here in Sweden, in Sweden. And she was Orthodox. She was a religious person. My father was actually a refugee from Germany, Berlin. He fled after the so-called Kristallnacht.
Yes.
This is 38.
Yes.
So they came 39 to Sweden at the very last moment. He was an atheist.
Okay.
So the house...
Still a Jew, but an atheist Jew.
Yeah.
Right.
Both Jewish. Yes. Mother or religious, my father an atheist. So at home, my mother's rules applied. So we, on Shabbat, we didn't light the electricity. We had a kosher home, and so on and so forth. But when my father went out to do his business and had his dinners with his business associates, I'm sure he ate both pork and anything that he liked. Yeah. So it was sort of a diverse, pretty good upbringing in that way. Both of them were convinced Zionists.
Okay.
So my upbringing was Jewish, semi-religious, semi-not, but Zionist.
Okay.
100%.
So the idea of Israel was something which was quite appealing.
Yeah, appealing. Both my parents worked a lot for Keren Kayemet, to collect money for different projects. They went there. There were sort of VIPs, could go ahead in the long lines, and a driver were picking and they liked it, and it was very meaningful to them. So for the first, let's say, 15 years, I was part of that fairy tale of a land with no people for a people with no land. That's the Zionist slogan, right?
And when did that change?
Slowly after, eventually I started feeling I wasn't a journalist when I was 15, of course, but I already started thinking about sources. Is this a fairy tale, or what is my upbringing? So when I was 20, perhaps I started thinking a bit more free about it and saying maybe this isn't quite true.
And to go through that kind of, I don't know whether it's an intellectual, or whether it's a philosophical, or whether it's a political kind of journey. Maybe it's a combination of all of those.
I'd say emotional.
Probably even emotional.
It starts with a feeling, something is missing in this story.
But at 20 years old, what was the emotional here? What was it?
Something is not right in my upbringing. This story that I was injected with, brought up with, feeling for. When I had my bar mitzvah at 13, I was counted as a religious Jew. I went to Israel. My parents took me. I had an aunt in Israel. I had cousins in Israel. I still have. So, what was your question?
The question was, what you said. In addition to the intellectual, philosophical, political, you said emotional. What was it? As a 20-year-old, what kind of emotions are driving you to change and to alter your way of thinking on something that is so profound?
Yeah, that's a good question. The way when you don't have a good answer, but you have to understand that I was brought up in a bubble, like many minorities do. So my parents' friends were Jews. My father went out on his business trips.
Yes.
That's something else. But our social life was Jews. I went to a Jewish school for the first 6 years. I went to a Jewish summer camp for 7 summers or something like that. I was seeing Jewish girls. My first wife was Jewish. And it takes some time to be able to reflect, to see this is a bubble. Okay, it can be a bubble that I want to stay in. But eventually around 20, I started feeling it was a bit too tight for me.
Right.
So I started, after the first time I was into a home that was not Jewish, I was 15 years old. Literally, that I stepped over a threshold to a home. So I'm a late beginner, because I was so in this...
insulated.
Insulated, but also a very secure.
Protected.
Protected, but also I felt at home. I knew everyone, everyone knew me. They knew my strengths, my weaknesses, if I was good in football or in this or that, So
the first time you stepped over that threshold was 15. When you were 15.
Yeah, it's crazy. That's how strong this was. And eventually, around 20, I started feeling a bit strangled. So I started seeing Christian friends or Swedish friends. I didn't think of non-Jewish friends, let's say. Mostly Swedes, mostly Christians or secular Swedes, Christians, this and that. And that starting a process.
Obviously.
I don't know if this makes sense to you.
No, it does. It does, absolutely. But it's quite fascinating because, in a way, it's a story of a gradual conversion. Because
What?
Well, the thing is that Zionism, Jewish Zionism particularly, is something which is extremely powerful. It's very, very powerful.
It's a strong story.
It's embedded very strongly in the very psyche of...
But not only Jews, in the whole Western Europe, where...
Well, that's where in my mind, it becomes problematic, because then it takes on layers of philosophy, of history, of politics, and the such that we, you could delve in and you can start to argue.
And it's a strong, toxic mixture. When you mix all these things together, that becomes toxic in my mind. And also, you can also add another thing, bad conscience from Europe and the States, what happened to the Jews and the Roma people and the homosexuals and everything. But So it's a messy. I mean, life is messy, but this is a messy story.
How, when, let's just say, when and why did your first awareness, I mean, obviously you became a journalist and a very illustrious, esteemed journalist, I would suggest. I mean, you have a history.
Let's say I was a journalist.
But the journalist has a particular mindset.
Yes.
And that mindset, in at least my estimation, I'm looking, at you through, reading about you. But
and maybe from yourself also.
I would suggest that for a journalist,
yes.
I mean, that kind of investigative mindset, that kind of trying to delve deeper, that trying to scratch beneath the surface.
Yeah.
When and why did you start being aware of something called Palestine, of something called a Nakba, which became so prominent in your later life?
I was more, the first thing I decided to do, and when I was maybe 20, 25, was saying, this is not my conflict, Israel-Palestine. I'm a Swedish Jew, I have a family, I have kids, I will work here in Sweden. This is my base, this is where I will do my work. So this is not for me.
Yeah.
That was my first position, right? And that lasted actually up till 2002.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because then I was dragged into it.
Okay.
Yeah. But before that, no, it's not for me. I mean, I wasn't in favor of it. I wasn't in favor of the occupation 67.
Yeah.
Of course. I mean, 67, I wasn't that old.
Yeah.
I was...
You're about 10 years old?
No, 53. I was 24. I was pretty old, but I wasn't that interested in...
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so...
No, I was 14 years old.
You're 14.
Yeah, I'm doing the math here.
The math.
No, so I had different strategies not to become involved because I understood this is touchy subject.
Is it because it was easier not to be involved? Or is it because...
No, it was easier because I didn't have to get involved in something that would hurt the feelings of my parents, for example. I mean, I wasn't super positive before 2002, but then it became a question to me, what kind of person do I want to be? How can I deal with this? Can I fix something that can't be fixed? Those kind of questions. And before that, I could sort of get away with it a little.
Were you exposed to any Palestinian narratives before 2002?
No, I wouldn't say I was. And I wouldn't say I was interested in it either. But I wasn't interested in Israeli politics either.
Right.
When someone, what do you think of this new prime minister? Who? Yeah, I don't care.
Right.
So I let that slide.
So besides the obvious tragic event in 2002 that led to the death of your mother, but how, in real terms, did this impact you? What changed so that after that, you took on something that you hadn't taken on before that?
Well, at first, nothing and everything. I mean, personal grief and the well I was describing before, that black hole. And trying to make sense of a senseless murder. I mean, So for the first 3 years up till 2005, I was pretty numb. I mean, as a person, emotionally numb. I mean, I worked. I could do my work. I had a career. I had a family, but not really in touch with myself. I didn't really was in touch with myself. Then 2005, if I can jump to that.
Yeah, of course.
I woke up almost 3 years to the day of the killing of my mother. I woke up 5 o'clock in the morning, which is a couple of hours earlier than usually. And I had an idea already. It was going to be a TV documentary. And mind you, I was a newspaper guy.
Yeah.
I never did TV before. And it was going to be called... It was a documentary about the killing of my mother. It was going to be called My Mother Was Killed by a Suicide Bomber. So 5 o'clock, I sent an email to a TV station. I knew the head of the TV station, the managing director. And 2 weeks later, I got the mail back. Yeah, we're going to do this. We'll send you out to Israel and the West Bank and I did. So I didn't research the story. I got a photographer, I got a fixer, I got a translator, and we went.
The making of that documentary, I'm presuming that it had a profound impact, because maybe you found out, you discovered some new elements of yourself, maybe, and of the whole scenario whilst making the film.
Yeah, that was exactly my idea. You know, I was going to look up my mother's best friend. They were sitting at the same table. My mother was killed. She survived. So I started interviewing her in Sweden. Then we went to Israel.
She was Swedish?
Yeah. That was my mother, Swedish Jewish. And then we went to Abu Kabir, you know, where they take care of the dead bodies outside of Tel Aviv. Yeah. Abu Kabir, I think, is an Arabic word, by the way. Still.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
The father of the big, the grand Abu Kabir.
Yeah. And I met the guy in charge. He later got sacked because he had a lot of dealings with the inner organs of the dead, selling and stuff. So he got, but that's another story. And then I met one of the firefighters that came to Park Hotel in Netanya and interviewed him. And then we went to Tulkarem on the West Bank, occupied West Bank. And there I met first the brother.
Who?
The brother of the suicide bomber, and spent like 3-4 hours.
What drove you to go and seek out the family of the suicide bomber?
Yeah, but that was my idea that you touched on. I was thinking, I don't feel anything. I don't feel hate.
Right.
I actually didn't feel anything, but my idea was, why am I not hating these people?
Okay.
I didn't hate them because I was turned off. I didn't realize that. I was still in a trauma state. But I thought I was ready to do this work after 3 years, and I didn't feel hate. So I said, what's wrong with me? Let me go and meet these people and see what happens. Will I hate them? Will we have a dialogue? Will we become friends? Will we cry together? Will we fight? Whatever, you know? That was the journalist in me. It wasn't me talking, but I thought it was me talking. So we did that. And we met the suicide bomber's brother the first day. I didn't tell him who I was. I was a journalist from Sweden.
Okay.
Yeah, my fixer had arranged all these things. And I instructed him, don't tell them who I am. Just say I'm a journalist from Sweden. You don't have to tell them I'm Jewish. You don't have to tell them about my mother. So then we slept in Tulkarem one night. And the next day, the brother was going to take him to his father's house. Okay. And before we jump into his car, I say to him, hey, I got a problem. You know, my mother was killed by your brother. Should I tell your father this or not? So I made my problem his problem. Okay. So I expected him maybe to say, oh, you can go to hell. This is the end of this interview. And the viewer would have accepted that because I tricked him. Yeah. And maybe they would, you know, depending on where the sympathy of this. But he didn't. He was still he was a representative of the cause, obviously. This is a Hamas family. Yeah. So he was very upset. He drove like crazy to his father, but he were still in this thing with me. So I locked him in. So go into the fathers. I start regretting the death of his son, all of these things that you say politely. And I still didn't say who I was. And this went on for a year, not a year, it felt like a year, an hour or so. And then the father was wrapping it up. And then I said to the son, the second son, the brother of the suicide killer, is there anything you think your father should know about me? So I pushed him once more. And then he had to say, he's the son of one of those who disappeared. That was the expression. Okay. And then the father compliments me back, saying, oh, I'm sorry for your loss. So we're sort of equal. And then he starts explaining to me, oh, you know, it's not the Swedes. He knew I was from Sweden. It's not the Swedes we're after. It's not the Germans. It's not the Italians. It's the Jews that we're after. I guess he meant the Israelis.
Israelis, yes.
But at that time, I wasn't as knowledgeable about all these things. So I said, yeah, but my mother was Jewish. And then he said, oh, that's the fate. You know, that was Yeah. And that was sort of the end of the whole thing. So there was no dialogue. I had set it up in a way that dialogue would never happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was quite an aggressive thing from my part. Passive aggressive, you call those things. So I sort of hit them back and exploded. This was my bomb, you know. And everyone thought it was a great documentary. I was very brave. But when I think about it now, it's 18 years later, I wouldn't do it at all like that today. So this was a step, what you're asking for. It's not a turning point. It's just steps.
How would you do it today?
Today, I would ask my fixer to set up a meeting and explain who I am, exactly everything they need to know about me, and they can decide if they want to meet me or not. And I would say, I lost a mother, you lost a son. Maybe we can talk about this. Maybe not. It's up to you. So I would show myself.
And then you, in the subsequent years, you became more aware of a side of a story which you previously weren't.
Exactly.
Which is the story of the Palestinians.
Yeah. And I started writing about it quite aggressively, to be frank, in some newspapers.
When you say aggressively, what does that mean?
I did a piece.
A lot, using tough language?
Yeah, I did a piece. Yeah, I was angry. And when you write when you're angry, you should always sleep on it, right?
Yeah.
Before you send it in to the editor. I just sent it off, you know. I was... And this was during the second Intifada, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. When is this? 2014?
Around,
something?
yeah, around.
You know. And the headline, I suggested it and they published it, not in my name.
Right.
Not in my name. And this was the angle was, if you think it's a good idea to kill 500 kids, okay, go ahead and do it, but not in my name. That was it was a simple idea, but quite aggressive, of course. And a lot of my Jewish friends felt threatened by this because they were saying, oh, but I'm not saying this, he's saying this, will they go after me then? One of my best friends stopped seeing me. We lost contact, or he cut off contact. Some of my more social friends, if they saw me on the street, they went over to the... So that was also, in a way, activating my own trauma once more, like the documentary was. I was completely wasted after those 2 weeks in Palestine and Israel. And I wasn't kind to myself, and if you're not kind to yourself, you can't be kind to others.
Yeah.
So people felt very upset by this. So I did, but slowly, that was also just a step to another platform that I was thinking about. The first thing I did was interviewing Holocaust survivors, mostly Jews, but some Romas, but mostly Jews.
Interviewing them in
the podcast,
right.
And that became a book.
Is the podcast a Nakba?
No, survivors.
Survivors,
yeah,
right. Okay.
That's about 200 episodes with survivors.
Okay.
And after that, someone suggested to me, hey, I like your podcast. Maybe you can do a Nakba podcast. It was a friend of mine. And he financed me. Yeah, he's a businessman.
Okay.
But on the a leftist.
Right.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's a good idea. and then this time I did a little bit more research. But mostly I was just sitting down with people and learning from them. You know, one of the first old women on the West Bank, I always start, tell me about the Nakba. Only what you heard, what you saw, no hearsay, no second, I want your story. So the woman that's 85, perhaps, she says, which Nakba? And I thought already she's she's hazy.
Losing it.
She's losing it. This is not gonna work. So I say, what do you mean? Well, we have the Nakba 47, 48, 49, 56, 67, and it's ongoing. So I was educated right there and then.
Wow.
So that's I'm not stupid, but I'm not afraid of looking stupid.
Yeah. I know what you mean.
Yeah. So you learn by talking. I prefer that much more. Then when I understand how much I don't know,
Yes.
then I start reading. But then I'm motivated.
Right.
So I don't do with I'm not a heavy researcher. I'm a heavy talker. I'm a heavy listener. You know, when you listen to someone and you do it very actively and you're really curious. And if you don't understand, you ask, you know, but how, why, where are we? So then the story unfolds.
How easy was it, or maybe not easy,
No.
but how easy was it to start to address a historic event that, to your family, should have been something remarkable, something of immense historical, personal significance. But all of a sudden now you're through using the word that is espoused by the victims of the founding of Israel, you're using the word Nakba, the catastrophe, for a podcast. How did that fit with you?
How did that fit?
Yes,
What do you mean by that?
I mean, how comfortable were you doing that?
Mostly very comfortable. I got some reactions from some of the survivors, Holocaust survivors that I interviewed. When I presented my new project, they say, "Oh, you can't have this mixed. You can't have this in the same podcast. It has. You can't have." I had a Facebook page for my Holocaust survivors. You can't put the Nakbas into this, you know, some were very upset. So I said, okay, I make a new Facebook page, I make a new podcast on SoundCloud, different. So I made some adjustments according to their wishes. But it wasn't really, you know, the idea was good. So if you get a good idea, if you're funded, what's the problem?
Yeah.
I'm a curious guy, you know. So, and I think I was onto something. I was realizing maybe through the Holocaust and through the Nakba, maybe I can sort of make a closure. I mean, a personal closure. I'm not.
You're not a closure for history.
No,
let's just say.
No, that's not my feeling.
Okay.
So I'm just busy with myself.
Yeah.
You know, me, myself, and I.
Yes.
Yeah. But through that, I try to understand the world. So it's connected.
Tell me about a few things that you learned and you feel that you gained as knowledge, information, data, since you started working on a Nakba.
Well, first, like I told you, I realize now that this isn't a historic period that with a beginning and an end. That was my first lesson that this woman gave to me for free. Yeah, it's ongoing. So
that's a series of Nakbas.
It's a series of Nakbas, but it's also ongoing. Yeah. It's happening right now, as we all know. So that was a very important knowledge for me, because that changed my whole focus of what we're going to talk about. Because I was, let's talk about 48. This will be the podcast 48. No, it can be before 48. You can talk about the 30s. Some were born and had memories from that. Being good neighbors. I learned, for example, a lot of new expressions for Jews from these people. You can talk about Palestinian Jews, national Jews, and Arabic Jews. All of those are Jews born in Palestine. Yeah. And mostly you had a good relationship. Maybe not 100%. I mean, with neighbors you can fight, right?
Of course.
Yeah. But you share bread, you have a cup of coffee. Your
children play together.
Yeah, they played. Some intermarriages happen. You could a Jewish musician could play in a Palestine, or wedding, or It was a social. It was a rich fiber.
Yeah.
And also, on the other hand, the European Jews. So I never were aware that there were. I mean, I knew there was Ashkenazi Jews and Sephardic Jews, and maybe Iraqi Jews or this and that. I knew a little bit, but I didn't understand this distinction, and that opened up a whole new field of understanding for me. So yeah, those are a few things, and I was also reminded, that people are people. I had a friend, a Holocaust survivor, he's not alive anymore. He used to say, there's only one race, and it's the human race. Easy to say, but if you
so
confront,
tough. I mean, brings up so many hurdles.
Yeah.
And to be honest, those hurdles are probably made up by people.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, themselves.
But I felt very strongly that, and that's old knowledge to me, that you don't have to be smart just because you're educated.
Yeah.
And you don't have to be stupid just
because you're uneducated.
Nah, or poor.
Yeah.
So some of the smartest people I met, both between the Holocaust survivors and the Nakba survivors, are not very well educated, but they're, to my mind,
probably the lady that told you about the series.
Super smart people.
Yeah. Why did you leave journalism?
I got tired of myself. I got very.
It was your decision.
Yeah, I got very cynical. I got very tired. I came into interview situations that I thought I understood things better than the one I was gonna. And that's the end of it, really.
True.
When you come to that point.
Around what time was this?
This is about 10, 15 years ago. Okay. And I felt a strong desire to reinvent myself.
Okay.
So I quit journalism. I started writing a book. That was my first.
During which time you worked as a taxi driver?
Yeah, and then I wasn't sure enough that I would be able to write full time.
Right.
Because I had all these, I was a deadline junkie.
Okay.
Yeah, as a newspaperman, you have the deadlines. And then the internet came, and that was perfect, because then I could do 5 stories in one day, and the click journalism and all of that. I got tired of myself. I felt cynical and tired. And I started driving taxi.
That was your decision?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And why? Why driving a taxi?
Because I felt so humiliated by where the media industry was going, because work was going up and pay was going down.
Okay.
And I had been a freelancer from time to time and always made good money. No more. You made no money. You could do a super good story and get like, I don't know, $200 for it or less. So I thought, I can do something that's not well paid, but I like.
Yeah.
And I don't know the trade. I'm learning it.
Yeah.
And have fun. And I won't feel humiliated by that. So that was a way of stepping back from the whole thing. And at the same time, I started writing books. The first one. And I wasn't sure that was going to be, for the next...
What was your first book?
It was about a guy that I knew. He was working for the Red Cross in Sweden. He was one of the top bosses. And he stole money from the organizations. Yeah. and got caught and ended up in jail. And we weren't friends exactly, but I interviewed him when I needed someone quickly that could help me with when I was working for television.
Right.
You needed someone that could do a 2-minute interview He always was there, and he always delivered. So he was a psychopath, of course. Yeah. We love those kind of guys, right? And so I felt fooled by him like everyone else. And I'd done like 20 stories for the newspaper. So I thought, this is a book. I just need 50% more. I didn't understand what writing a book really was about. Okay. I thought it was just a long article.
Okay.
So that's how I started.
And when did you write Nakba?
It came out this year. I started a couple of years ago.
How long? So it took you about
2 years.
Right.
Maybe 3.
Essentially, what's the message?
The message is they are people too. That's the message.
That's a very
They
profound
are people
message.
too. Yeah.
Very simple, but very profound.
Yeah. And
what does that mean in real terms? We're talking. I mean, as bombs fall on Gaza, and as people in their scores die every single day, what does your message that they are people too? What does that mean?
That it means whatever you want it to mean. I mean, I'm not a salesperson, I don't try to convince anyone to buy into my worldview, in case I have one, or my ideas, or my feelings, or anything. I'm not into selling stuff. I'm just proposing things, and this is a proposition. They are humans too. I mean, I started with saying there is only one race, the human race, so it just follows, it's just out of that. And if that means anything to anyone, I'm glad. If it doesn't, I can't change that. So I don't really think in messages more than to myself. I start with myself, and I'm convinced.
But it would be great if others were influenced.
Yes, of course. But not. I don't push it longer than that. I show them. I think if you have an open heart and you read about the Holocaust survivors, or you read this book, it will affect you and make you a little more empathetic, let's say. But that's beyond my reach.
Tell me this. Tell me this. You did more than 200 episodes with Holocaust survivors.
Yes.
One of the most heinous crimes of modern times, if not the, but definitely one of the most. And then you did 300 plus episodes about the Nakba.
No, 300 altogether, 75 Nakba episodes.
75 Nakba episodes.
And 225 maybe.
Right, okay.
So it doesn't matter. But
still, quite profound.
Yeah.
Quite big numbers.
Yeah.
How is it? And I'm asking you now, sitting where I am sitting, okay, with my own perspective on things, with my own upbringing, with my own education, with my own observation. How is it possible for someone who lived through the horrors of the Holocaust and Nazism and fascism, how is it possible for them to be okay with how Israel behaves in respect to the Palestinians?
Well, it's a good question. Once again, I can't talk for other people, first of all, so it's impossible. I can speculate, but that doesn't make things better. I just find that given the same experience, people draw very different conclusions. Let's say I'm sitting next to a woman who lost her father in the same suicide attack at Park Hotel in Netanya. She will probably have completely different conclusions to say what's her life lesson than me. So it happens. People. One of the survivors, Holocaust survivors, said very, very true that. Because I asked, how was the Jews treating each other in the camp? Were all of them saints? Were only the Nazis or the guards devils? So she says, you know what? Auschwitz wasn't a tea party for nice little girls. That was her answer. And it says it all, of course. I mean, if you think about it, it's not a strange thing. So there are all kinds of people, and one of my questions, especially to the Holocaust survivors for some reason, not so much to the Nakba survivors, was when did you become a human being again? Right?
Wow.
It's a pretty good question.
It's an excellent question.
Yeah, I usually ended up, at the end, when they were sort of very free and everything was flowing openly. And I got different answers from everyone, more or less. All from, I don't want to talk about that, to, I'm sorry, but I was always a human being. I beg your pardon, one guy said, like an excuse. They never took that away from me. Another woman said, she's 82 at the time, I'm waking up every morning and thinking about that.
Wow.
Yeah. So there you go.
How...
Does that answer your question?
It's fascinating because it's a very important insight in trying to understand. Because as you put it, I mean, we're dealing with human beings ultimately. I mean, you can label them, but we're ultimately dealing with human beings. So what I'm interested in, what fascinates me, in the context of what we're seeing, the horrors that we're seeing unfold before our own eyes, as to how people deal with that, from the intellectual as well as emotional point of view, especially those who are either themselves survivors or children of survivors?
Yeah, well, you can turn it around and say the slaughter of Hamas in Israel that happened on October 7 of civilians. They are themselves oppressed, but they do this terrible deed. So I don't have any insights. I don't have a clue. I don't have any insights
Are you
to
in
that.
touch with Palestinians right now?
Yeah.
Either in
Both
Gaza,
in
West
Gaza
Bank?
and West Bank, and also Israelis.
And how? What do they tell you?
No, they usually say I'm okay for the moment. I mean, I'm just. Are you okay? Is there anything I can do? Which is a sort of stupid question to put someone who's under bombardment. But so I'm also in touch with my friends and relatives in Israel. So I don't find that difficult to understand. You know, you have always a choice to be an asshole or be a human being. Everyone always, and sometimes we're both things at different times. You know, so I don't expect anyone to behave better because of a bad upbringing or a bad experience of being in a camp or anything. You know, I interviewed a survivor. I was shocked. He was super racist, this guy. And he, not only against only Muslims, he had all blacks. You know, I said, we have to stop this discussion. I can't go on with this because your views are so terrible, and I don't want to hear more about it. You know, we almost started fighting, him and me. He was a fascist, and he was in Auschwitz. Go figure.
This particular person, I mean, this is interesting. This particular person, was he a fascist before Auschwitz?
I don't know.
Or did he become a fascist because of Auschwitz?
Yeah. My idea, only from my own experience, is you are what you are pretty much all through your life, right? And you have your fundamental views, understanding of the world, and it doesn't change that much. The only thing that you can change is your own feelings and being here right now, like we speak. I try to be, you know, listen to you and express what I'm thinking. Probably he was a racist, but I don't know.
Did you explore with the survivors, did you explore the potential of fighting back, of resistance?
During the war.
During the war.
Yeah, there was a lot of fighting back. My brother actually wrote a whole book. He's also an author. It's called Not Lambs to Slaughter. That book.
Yes, I know the book.
Yeah,
I know
that's my brother. And so it's a long catalog of resistance, of fighting, of different kind of,
Tell me
this wasn't really... Yeah, there were some stories when they actually escaped or when they went out in the woods, in the Polish woods, and were part of the resistance, sure. Oh, yeah.
How is that seen as different from the resistance of Palestinians? Whether it be through Hamas, whether it be through the PLO, whether it be through some individual person who takes it upon himself to do something,
you know,
how is it seen as different?
I don't get that. I don't. I mean, I'm openly critical of any killing of civilians. That's comes natural to me.
Yeah.
Even
I would suggest most people.
Yeah.
I would suggest most people. Yeah.
But in the end, if you can do the trick that you dehumanize the enemy, first of all, I don't see an enemy. I see people and I see governments. Maybe there are good and bad governments, for sure. And there's an elite here and there that does terrible things. But I try to stick with, you know, if you're on the ground floor talking with people over a cup of coffee like we do now, then there isn't we're not on two sides in this discussion. I don't feel. We're discussing things, you know, some things we have maybe different ideas, but you don't become enemies with someone that you, or not automatically. So I can't answer those questions. That's beyond.
I mean,
I could speculate, but I don't like.
Of course, no.
Speculate.
Well, you know, on many levels, we're speculating. On many levels, there are realities. I mean, we could definitely look at the fact that, for instance, entire families in Gaza have been wiped out. We can look at that. That's a fact.
Yeah, that's a fact.
But then we can speculate on how people respond to feeling to the reality of, for instance, being caged, being oppressed, being prevented from
being in a camp or one sort of another, for example.
I mean, Gaza.
Yeah,
I mean,
I've
been to Auschwitz in my recent visit to Krakow. I went for a day, and it's everything horrible that you imagine, you know. And,
but not completely different.
But the thing, yes, I mean, when you know,
I can't help you with this.
I'm sorry. Let me tell you a little bit about my own visit to Gaza back in 2012. I went to Gaza. This was my only visit. I went to Gaza with a group of people. It was a sort of a charitable visit, and we used the fact that the Arab Spring had managed to open up the Rafah border from the Egyptian side. So we thought,
came
well,
that way, okay.
And what absolutely overwhelmed me was listening to young people, men and women, talking about their dreams and their aspirations. And one of them, I remember a young woman who had achieved very, very high grades in her high school exams, and had actually been accepted in a university somewhere, either in Germany or Switzerland or somewhere. So I don't remember. And she said this was 2 years ago, but I haven't been able to go because I can't leave.
Yeah,
and
she's locked in.
And another person who talks about his grandmother being ill with cancer and needing chemotherapy, but she's been waiting for about 4 months because the border isn't opening, and you know, all of a sudden, you realize that, you know, we carry our calendars and our schedules with us about what we're doing tomorrow at 7 o'clock and what we're doing next Tuesday at 4 p.m. and the such. And in Gaza, that is meaningless.
Absolutely.
Having an appointment, having a doctor's whatever, having an admission to a university, it means absolutely nothing. And all of a sudden you realize, you know, we talk about the lack of the ability to travel, or the lack of sometimes some food stuff or some whatever necessities. But you can never ever imagine how someone who is of sound mind, sound body, but can't do the most mundane of things that everyone takes for granted, and how that infringes on their humanity. And all of a sudden they start thinking differently, they start acting differently. All of a sudden time becomes almost irrelevant, and they're living that kind of reality. You know, that is something that sticks with me until now.
Yeah, I can understand, and I can't help but think about the Holocaust stories that I heard in camp. But there is always the possibility, even in the worst circumstances, to be a human being or be an asshole. And that goes in every circumstances. You can't judge people. I never judge people for killing another one, let's say in camp, it happened, or stole bread from one to another. You can't judge people, but you can respect and look up to people who didn't, who could behave under the worst of circumstances. And I think that goes both for Auschwitz and for Gaza.
Tell me, I mean, as a Swede, and I sit here as a Brit, what can we do in order to bring a resolution to this problem?
You mean peace?
Well, I mean some sort of settlement. You can talk about peace. You can talk about justice. You can talk about an end to, you know, the problems of whether it be occupation, whether it be the dehumanization of the other, whether it be racism, whether it be, I don't know what it is, you know, the anti.
Well, I guess we're sitting here talking. The fact that we can have a meaningful conversation, hopefully, for me it's meaningful. That's a step. That I was invited here and I choose to come. Yeah,
True.
yeah. So that's my answer. You have to talk, and of course there has to be bigger structures to solve things. But I. Like one of the smart women in my Nakba book, I said at the end, well, but you sound hopeful. How is that possible? All shit you're going through. Well, of course I'm hopeful. The Turks were only here for 400 years before they had to leave. So there's hope. There's always a solution, and I can only do so much. And this is what I'm doing. I'm writing books and I'm talking, I'm meeting people, listening to you. You're listening to me. I think that's a good beginning.
Where are our governments going wrong?
Huh?
Where are our governments going wrong? What are they doing wrong?
Talking about Sweden and Britain.
Amongst many others. But yeah, let's talk about Britain and Sweden, for instance, and then let's talk about the West.
Such a strong story, going from the Holocaust, or maybe from the Bible, the whole Christian fairy tale about the Palestine. It's a fairy tale, if you ask me. The holiness of the land and the right of return. I mean, any Jew from anywhere, be it a half Jew or a quarter Jew or whatever, has a right to return to this place. But the Palestinian that were driven away and is in a camp or maybe in a fancy summer house in Hebron today or wherever. I mean, it's rich and poor, of course. They're not allowed to return. So I think it's imbalance of maybe racism. Let's put it that way. We're not. I'm brought up that everyone has the same value. And I believe in that. And if you believe in that, you can't accept this. Because the children of Gaza or the children of Israel that's being slaughtered, they have the same, everyone has the same value. Old or sick or Muslim or Jew, doesn't matter, Christian. And I think there is a good Israel is still seen as a part of Europe. And we Europeans, I mean, we're such a great nations. Like the Brits, what they did all over their empire. The Germans, what they did in Africa. The French. And even Sweden had a little colony somewhere, And we don't treat the Lapps, the people up north. We have treated them very badly. The Romas, they treated very badly. The Jews, from time to another, not treated fair. So who are we? We think we're so human. And we obviously we don't look at Arabs as 100% human beings. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't get it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very sad state of affairs if you were to look at the political reality that we live. And I personally believe around the world. Yeah. I mean, this is something that is not only exclusive to one country or another.
Right.
I think we are bereft of thinkers, of people who, as you put it, not only educated, but smart and intelligent and creative.
Like you and me.
Like you and I, absolutely. But in reality, it's a sad state of affairs.
It is.
Look at our political leaders facing immense crises, yet failing to come up with even basic solutions.
Yeah, the pendulum is swinging to the wrong side, but it will pass.
Yeah. You're hopeful.
Yes, the Turks left after 4. They had to leave after 400 years. I've been working on this, trying to close my circle for 20 years. So
has it closed yet?
It's that's a strong statement, but beginning. It's beginning. Yes.
Okay.
It helped me. I dedicated Maybe I can read it. Can I do a translation quickly?
Of course.
The dedication in this
Any
book.
plans to translate it into English?
Yeah, if you have the money, sure. This book is to the memory of my mother, Bernt Hermele. She was born 1923 in Königsberg in the German province of Ostpreußen. When the city in 1946 became part of Soviet Union, the name was changed to Kaliningrad. She was killed 2002 in Netanya in Israel, the place that before was called Khalid and then was in Palestine.
Beautiful.
So this is
Beautiful.
what I can do.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Bernt.
Yeah, thank you.
That was fantastic. Excellent.
Thank you.